We're going to be talking a little bit about time management and commitment and what those things mean when it comes to your life as an athlete, as a baseball player. We're live now on Facebook. Xavier Scruggs spent some time in the
Live.
big leagues. That's it. Spent some time in the big leagues. He's now recovering from a torn Achilles. Suffered that in training recently as he was just staying in shape, waiting for the call for a contract. So I know that struggle of trying to stay in shape, but then also trying to battle back from an injury. And now you got to reset. So it's been an interesting couple of weeks of topics. Just talking about things that relate to us as athletes, but also relate to your current situation and the injury you're going through. But like I said,
Right.
today we're talking about time management and commitment. And so here on the Prospect Dugout Network with my man, Xavier Scruggs, we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. Xavier, why don't you give us an update on your life, on what's going on in the past week, what's happened, and give us an update on your Achilles.
Man, I'm just happy like baseball is back, man. Like at least for what we know now,
Mhm.
obviously with some of the issues going on with the Marlins, that we don't know what's going to happen. But I'm glad that baseball is back. I'm glad that even if no fans are in there right now, we're able to watch on TV, watch on our devices,
Yeah.
highlights. So I think that that's huge, and I'm happy to really be seeing what's going on right now. A great opening weekend of baseball, and
Mhm.
glad to keep it see it keep going forward. As far as me, I'm doing good. Just taking it day by day. Gives me more time to dive into extraordinary athletes, dive into helping young athletes. Jumping on lives, jumping on ESPN broadcasts with Korean baseball as well.
Mhm.
So it just gives me a lot of time to keep expanding what I want to do, and that's help let the youth understand their influence and
Mhm.
learn these life skills that we talk about.
That's it, man. Let's jump right into time management. How do you start it? How do you get started with time management? How do you even begin?
Yeah, I think time management is important for athletes to. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't even matter what age to me. I feel like it's important to understand, okay, we've talked about goals, we've talked about focus, we talked about, your motivation, discipline.
Mhm.
I think it's important to understand, okay, what's important to you? And that is where you start with what you spend your time with.
Mhm.
We've talked about if baseball is really important to me, I'm going to dedicate a certain amount of time to getting outside and
Mhm.
practicing the things that I can practice outside, working on the things that I can practice on inside.
Mhm.
Working on those things that I can practice on visually, whether that be, we talked about getting into YouTube, we talked about watching our own video, and same thing with understanding stats.
Mhm.
That stuff is important today too, and analytics, especially the higher you get. So
Mhm.
understanding your swing and understanding what you do in the game, pitcher, defense, whatever it may be, those stats are important as well. So let's dive into, okay, now how do I separate time for each one of those things?
Mhm.
Obviously, everybody's got a lot going on in their own life, but time management is about deciding and deciphering up like, okay, this time goes to this. For me, I feel like some of the weaknesses that I have or that I've had during my career, that's where I want to dive more into spending more time with that.
Mhm.
So I encourage young athletes to say, okay, these are the things I'm good at. These are the things I'm not so good at. Let me try to find a little bit more time into dealing with some of these weaknesses. But basically, time management, I feel like, is um, really understanding the things that are important to you and
Mhm.
really dedicating time to those things
Mhm.
and figuring out, okay, how do I also deal with some things that may not be as important, but I need to
Right.
navigate that as well.
Right. So you're not even really talking about necessarily cutting things out. You're talking more about focusing on the things that are important and figuring out how to apply a daily, weekly, monthly dedication of time towards that. Not you're not just being simple like, okay, how do I manage my time? Okay, I'm going to get up at this time, do this, and then do all that. You're talking about spending time and doing things and having activity and pushing forward on different things and making sure that you're providing yourself with enough time to do those things.
Right, exactly. And I think that that's what you said. It's almost like not necessarily just recognizing the fact of your time, but putting
Mhm.
almost an action in place, because everybody's different. You know, you may be somebody that works better late at night and is able to stay up till 2, 3 in the morning, and then
Mhm.
functions okay on 7 hours of sleep, whatever it may be. I may be a person that I need to get up early. I need to get my workout in, and then maybe go to sleep earlier, maybe 8 o'clock p.m. or 9 o'clock p.m. So
Mhm.
everybody's different. So understanding how you work, I think that's
Mhm.
important for an athlete to say, okay, this is how I do when I stay up till this time, or this is how I do when I'm able to get, into bed at this time. So start to figure out for yourself, okay, I do good at this time. Maybe let's plug that in. Okay.
Mhm.
Maybe that's my YouTube time, watching guys that I really like seeing play, or that's when I can watch an MLB game on ESPN Plus, whatever it may be. Try to figure out, okay, what works best for you. If I know I have homework or I have
Mhm.
a project, like, let me try, and I know I'm a baseball player too. Let me try to knock out as much as I can early in the week with the project, because that's not something I'm going to want to do later on in the week. That's going to take away from
Right.
baseball. You know
Right.
what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
also that time management factor is like not letting things that you don't care about as much, or things that aren't as important to you, take away from the time that you have with the things that you do really want to focus your time in.
And I think that just boils down to figuring out like what you're maybe even setting goals and setting just a list of attainables, essentially like a growth strategy of where you, like we've talked about this long before. I remember I was in Melbourne for a baseball tournament, and we had our live show during that time, and that's what we were talking about,
Yeah.
time management. But or I'm sorry, we were talking about writing out a list and preparing and doing things like that. So what I'm saying is essentially figuring out where you want to be. This is something you actually talked about last week when we were talking about your injury. Figuring out where you want to be a year from now, where you want to be 6 months from now, where you want to be 3 months from now, a month from now, a week from now, so you can go back and look to see if you're doing the things that are getting you to that point. So if you're being lazy, well, you really haven't done anything to get to that point. So now you've said, okay, finding the things that you're good at and working at those, finding the time to do it. Now, how do you stick with it? How do you say, okay, I'm manage my time, I'm setting it up, I'm doing these things, but then how do you keep going? What are some of the things that we can use to encourage ourselves to continue going with that process?
Yeah, yeah. And before I touch on that, I think somebody asked a great question here, Cole Springer. How long should you work out a day?
Hmm.
That is an individualized, process a lot of the times. Not everybody's different. So
Hmm.
if you can knock out the right workout within 30 minutes,
Hmm.
that's cool. But if some guy needs a little bit longer, maybe an hour to 2 hours to really get in everything that they need to get in, maybe they had an injury, they
Hmm.
need to do a little more ability, and every day may be different. So
Hmm.
that's why I like touch on the homework factors, because every day homework is going to be different, right?
Hmm.
So you have to be able to navigate those types of things, and then being able to stick to the plan, like you just mentioned, is the most important thing. And the way that I encourage people to stick to it is, like we talked about many times before, writing down, okay, what does my schedule look like today? Let me
Hmm.
write down a plan. Let
Hmm.
me not be that kid or that player that says, oh, I got to get to practice in 5 minutes, and then I'm running late. I'm trying to grab my bag, get it together. Like, I think preparation goes into time management. You
Hmm.
know what I'm saying? Like, if I plan on managing my time the right way, I need to be prepared for
Hmm.
every part of the day. So
Hmm.
that's why having a planner, having a scheduler, whatever it may be, is really important to help you stick to what you're doing. And also
Yeah.
knowing your end goal.
Hmm.
If I have an end goal of, okay, I want to make this varsity team, and these are the things I want to do to get there, why would I not stick to that goal,
Right.
right?
Right.
So I think that's
Do you
really
think,
important,
do
the
you think,
preparation.
do you think not, um, for some people not being able to, um, like feel something that's real, like it's not just okay, a goal that I want to get to, but if they're not seeing tangible results, like how does that person stick with it? Because I know there's a lot of people that they give up when they don't see the result
Yeah,
right away, and it sucks because there's a lot of things that take time. I mean, everything takes time, but you know for me, you've got to look at, okay, 1 through 10. I'm not waiting till I get to 10 to see the success. I'm seeing how I'm progressing through 1 through 10, and that's determining my success. If I'm remaining stagnant or going backwards and not really having fun, then really like that's not pushing me towards, that goal that I want to be at.
Yeah, yeah. And my answer to that, and this is something that I've thought of for a long time, is faith. Having faith within yourself to understand that, okay, no matter what I get, no matter the results today or in this moment,
Mm-hmm.
I have faith in myself to be able to perform and get to where I want to get to down the line.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So I think it's important to remember, okay, it's not so important what I did today or
Mm-hmm.
tomorrow, but if I consistently commit to it, and that's something that we'll talk about later, is commitment, is like if I consistently commit to it, I see some of those end results. Like some of the like we can talk about some of the best players in the major leagues or even in college. Like they weren't that successful when they were maybe a junior in high school, or maybe they were in
Mm-hmm.
junior high. Like they had to commit to being something every day before they saw this type of result. And the
Yeah.
result that they have now is not the finished product, right?
Yeah.
We're never a finished product.
Yeah.
So I think it's a part of having faith that, if I put the plan in order and I stick to it, like eventually the right results will come.
For sure. Dude, man. I remember a couple weeks ago I told you I hadn't seen The Last Dance with Michael Jordan. And guess what? It's on Netflix now, so I have been able to watch a couple episodes. Dude, that is some good content right there. Just being able to look inside the mind. Like I've got a whole different perspective on Dennis Rodman after seeing that and seeing, a little insight into his life story and what he's gone through and like the outside you can establish your own thoughts and perspective on that. But if you
Right.
hear the story and hear, I mean, Michael Jordan said he was one of the best teammates that he's had, because regardless of what he was doing off the court or whatever, he knew that when it was time for him to perform and put in the work, ain't nobody was going to match him. Like he was going to outwork everybody else. So just it was really cool watching this and just seeing inside the mind of those guys when it comes to what they were dealing with in the 97-98 season, what Michael Jordan coming into the Bulls franchise, that you know talk about commitment, talk about time management. Like Jordan comes in and that team's sub 500, terrible. For third game of the year, he's talking about how they were down by like 10 or something at the end of the third quarter, and he said everybody on the
Right.
bench pretty much given up, and he's like, what are you guys talking about? Like we still got a whole quarter to go. And so from that point, like things changed. He started, he even said when he first got to the Bulls that he wasn't going to, try to speak out and use his voice because he didn't have a voice. He was going to go and find who the leader on the team was and outwork him and show his voice through his actions, through his work ethic, through his performance, on the court. And that, they made the playoffs that year. And then all of a sudden they made the playoffs every year that he was there. And then eventually got to the finals, got through the Pistons, got to the finals. And then they're the only team to have two three-peats.
That's the crazy thing. And I
Insane.
think you mentioned something that's like, and I kind of just realized what you said is like your time management, your commitment, your
Mm-hmm.
goals, whatever, doesn't have to be like everybody else's. Like they didn't expect to win at that
Mm-hmm.
point that you were talking about. So
Mm-hmm.
that was like an older mentality, and his
Right.
mentality could have easily been like, okay, I'll just match what everybody else is thinking.
Mm-hmm.
No, he stuck with what his goals were, how he knew how he navigates the game, and he was able to bring a different light to the Bulls. So I thought that was cool that you mentioned that.
Yeah, and I think one of the biggest things was when he was like being vocal in team practice. He wasn't worried about hurting somebody's feelings. He was worried about the team coming together and being the best individual players they could be and the best team that they could be. And I think it was the center said that, Mike didn't care if you didn't like how he was talking, because if you didn't want to win and put in the effort, then leave. We don't want you here anyway. So I think, him, getting up early, doing the things that he had to do, showing up, being there, you know,
Right.
he really showed who he was as a person. So that was really cool to see. But let me go through here and see if there's any if we got any questions on Instagram. Um, you can look through there too. because you might have some different comments, but I wanted to do one more thing with one more topic with time management. How do we grow with that? How do we get bigger and better? Like you talked about,
Yeah.
finding something, finding the things that you're good at and working at those, having the faith and believing with it, believing in yourself to stick with it. But then how do you grow? How do you increase your load?
Yeah, I think you do that by kind of realizing and kind of trying to figure out what are the things that I'm doing right now that I thought were really good with my time,
Mm-hmm.
that I'm realizing those aren't producing the results that I want.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm transitioning from a outfielder to a pitcher, and now the drills, doing outfield drills, aren't as important. So I have to understand, okay, if my goal is to be maybe a varsity pitcher or a
Mm-hmm.
college pitcher, like I have to start changing that time management aspect of
Mm-hmm.
things. I thought something that you mentioned too reminded me of a Kobe Bryant story.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and, and he said that he was the guys on his team wanted to hang out one night, and you know what, he was like, they kept asking him over and over, and he was like, finally, he's like, all right, I'll hang out with you guys tonight, but then you guys are going to do what I do tomorrow. And so he hung out with them. They were out till whatever, 3 4 in the morning maybe, and then he knocks on their door, starts calling them at the hotel like, hey, 6 a.m., it's time to go. Well,
Time to
I'm
go.
going to the court. So like, no matter what it may be, stick to committing to your schedule, stick to committing what you know is going to make you better. So like your original question, when you start to understand things that aren't going to make you better
Mm-hmm.
and you've been doing them, start figuring out a way to knock off some of those on your schedule. Start taking those out of the way and start
Mm-hmm.
putting in things that are more important. I think that's how you grow. Also, I think you should also look at mentors,
Mm-hmm.
talk to coaches, talk to prospect dugout, hit them in the DMs. Figure out what are the things that I should be doing or spending more time if these are my goals. So
Right.
know what your goals are, and then go to those people, your family, whoever it may be. These are my goals. How do I spend more time on knocking these out?
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
that's important to ask questions.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, one thing too is to not look for the results. Like you can't grow in the time management. You can't grow in anything if you're looking for a result right away. Some things take a process. Some things take time to do. So I think as you are finding the things that you're good at and working on those, and as you're believing in yourself to get those things done, the growth comes when you're able to recognize those things early on and say, hey, this is going to be something that I'm passionate about, that I can really dedicate my time to. And that's going to allow you to add things to your schedule, add things to your plate, and be able to, increase your effectiveness and increase the things that you do when it comes to working out, when it comes to eating healthy, when it comes to, you're talking about with Kobe, like even with MJ in the Last Dance, like he stumbled into a hotel room on the road and he's like, I got to get out of here, and he ended up living by himself. And where'd those
Right.
guys end up? Those guys, we never really heard about them, but you hear about Michael Jordan. I think that's something that confuses a lot of people, is they think that just because they put in the work, just because they have the practice and the game, they go to the tournament and whatever, they're going to be successful. And that's not true, because you
Right.
may find that in that process, you might be good at something else. And you say, okay, all this stuff that I've done up until now is not a waste. It just prepared me
Right.
when I'm ready for making the decision of, okay, I'm going to go this way. Now I have the skill set and the tools, to do that. Really good stuff here, man.
Absolutely.
Like you're dropping some good stuff. Not a whole lot of comment. Hi Scruggs, where you at? Where are you at
I
right
saw
now?
one here that I can kind of tie into maybe our next conversation,
Yeah.
or our next topic. Gray Wolf Bet says, X, what's one of the hardest pitchers you've faced in your career? I can go down the list from Chapman to Sale, to Robertson, to even facing a Jose Fernandez in batting practice, live BP. So
Mhm.
there's a bunch of those guys, but when you are knowing that you want to compete at the highest level,
Mhm.
it's like, hey, you've already been committed to being the best. You almost don't even look at it as like, oh, this is a tough pitcher. No, this is what I do. I'm a tough hitter.
It's
So it's
business,
about
baby.
being, it's about being committed to your job, and that's something that we'll touch on. But that I thought that was a good question. I get
Yeah,
that a
for
lot,
sure.
because these pictures are tough.
I mean, to be honest, like I was actually thinking of that same exact concept a couple weeks ago, like looking at some batters that a kid came in and he was throwing a little bit harder, but they couldn't hit him. But then there was another kid that came in who was throwing slower and they couldn't hit him. Like what the heck? Like if you can't hit this, don't try to go to college. Don't try to go play
Right.
professional baseball because these kids aren't even that good. Like they don't even
Yeah.
know. And when I say not good, I just mean they don't have it all figured out. I'm not saying anybody's not
Right.
good. I'm just saying like he's throwing 90, but he doesn't know where the ball's going. Like that should tell you something. He's throwing 82, but he knows exactly where the ball's going every time and he can put it in spots. That should tell you something as well. So it's not a
Right.
knock on that player. It's a knock in the preparation. It's a knock in like, dude, if you're not ready for this, like this is what you're trying to do. So whether he's throwing 97 or 77, we got to look at it in not in terms of the toughest pitcher I face. Yeah, it's going to be challenging, but like you as a major league baseball player don't walk up against Aroldis Chapman and like crap, it's Aroldis. You walk up and say,
Right. Right.
okay, he throws 97 to 101 from the left. He loves his slider, does this, but he's been doing this lately, or but he doesn't have command of this, so I can sit on this pitch. A lot more goes into just seeing what the guy has, and I think that's what
Right.
separates. Just that's that first level of separation right there is taking what you see and offering a reaction because you don't even have any information. Like you can look at a news headline and then base your opinion and reaction off that news headline. The news headline could just be words pieced together from the article that have no correlation to what the article is about. So like you have to dive into it. So let's move on to onto commitment. What does commitment mean? What does it mean to be committed? And
Yeah. Yeah.
how do I show that commitment?
Yeah, I think, and I've written this down because I think that this is really important. Commitment is being loyal to the goals and the aspirations that you have set to yourself. It's basically a promise that you're making to yourself.
Mhm.
And if you can break a promise to yourself, that's one of the worst things that you can possibly do. To your own life.
Right.
So you want to be in the mindset of making good promises to yourself, promises that you can keep, promises that are going to challenge you. And I think those are important as you navigate your baseball career. As you keep practicing on getting better and things like that. Like we talk about goals and we talk about time management, committing to yourself, committing excellence to yourself is huge.
Mhm.
And I think that but there's three ways that we think about that as far as question wise.
Mhm.
You ask yourself, what am I personally committed to right now? How do I know I'm committed to that? And why am I committed to that? I think those are going to tell you a lot about what you're doing currently and how you can get better at making, whether it be adjustments or
Mhm.
figuring out what the next step is to getting better. So I think that stuff that's huge. So I made sure I wrote those down,
Yeah, repeat
and
those three
that's
things.
some. Yeah, what am I personally currently committed to? Almost that idea of what am I spending my time on?
Mhm.
What and how do I know I'm committed to that? How do I know I'm really locked in on that? How do I know I'm not just faking it or going through the motions? And then three is why am I committed to this? Where is this going to take me one day? Or how is this going to benefit me? So I think those three questions are really important when we talk about loyalty
Mhm.
to yourself and
Yeah.
making promises to yourself.
Okay, so do you have any do's and don'ts when it comes to commitment?
Yeah, I mean that's tough too because you're gonna make some commitments that you're gonna be like, man, I don't know if I should have did this.
Mhm.
One of the things to me is like I've always kind of been raised, and everybody's different, but to not quit something that I started, right?
Mhm.
So if I committed to doing something, if I told somebody that I'm going to be there to play catch with him, even if I'm showing up late, whatever it may be, I committed to doing it. And I committed to making myself better by going there to play catch with them.
Right.
So don't fall back on your own commitments. Don't fall back on your own promises, especially to yourself. So if I'm committed on making the varsity team, that means everything that I do has to line up with that, right? Like I can't just make decisions and know that they're going to hurt my chances of making the
Right.
varsity team.
Right.
So I think that that's really important to me. And I think the thing about commitment too is it requires an extreme amount of focus, which is something that we touched on like the first time me and you spoke about this. Is like you're gonna have to be focused. You're sometimes you're gonna like off waver, but at the same time you got to bring yourself back on track. And I think that's kind of one of the ways that we try
What
to
are some
navigate that.
tips? What are some tips for that? Like that's really good right there. You waver off and come like how do you reel yourself back in? It's like this ties into, what you were saying. How do I know that I'm even committed to it and not just faking it? Like when you're talking about don't fall back on your word and do what you said you what you would do. It does require an extreme amount of focus, but like when you do get distracted, how do you reel yourself back into that?
Yeah, no, that's tough itself too. That's the thing is like as a player, we're always gonna find some way or not we're gonna be distracted.
Mhm.
There's always gonna be tough times as far as pulling ourselves back in.
Mhm.
But I think, like we talked about, we go back and look at those goals. We look at what we've set for ourselves. We understand that we give ourselves grace. Like if we fail in a moment or whatever, we get distracted, understand that it happens
Mhm.
sometimes. Give yourself some cushion to understand that you're not going to be perfect,
Mhm.
especially in this game of baseball.
Mhm.
I can tell myself, hey, I commit to making this all-star team, but that may
Mhm.
not happen. So I need to understand that that doesn't mean I take a step back, but I keep going forward. I
Yeah.
find a way to keep getting better.
Mhm.
I think it's okay to give yourself some cushion sometimes to understand you're not going to do everything that you want to do.
Mhm.
For me personally, 7 years in the minor leagues before I got to the big leagues, like understanding that even though I told myself I made a promise that you're going to make the big leagues, you're going to get there no matter what it takes. I've seen guys fall off after, 3 or 4 years of not making it.
Mhm.
I made a commitment to myself. Sometimes it's not going to go the path that you want it to go, but you
Mhm.
have to figure out, okay, if I made this commitment to myself, I'm going to do everything I can to keep myself online with that.
Yeah.
So that's just a little example, but you try to figure out ways to keep yourself motivated, keep yourself excited, keep yourself engaged. That's why we find new activities and stuff to try to do all the
Yeah.
time, because I think that helps our commitment as well.
Yeah, and I think one thing to touch on that is like it's not necessarily like your commitment. Like if your commitment is I want to be a Major League Baseball player, like there's really no time commitment in a sense. Like there's no okay, I'm gonna commit to being a Major League Baseball player until I make it as a Major League Baseball player, July 1st, 2027, whatever that may be. You can't do that. So like the example that you gave, you spent 7 years in the minor leagues and you were around other guys that spent less time there and gave up. It doesn't mean that they didn't have a passion to play the game of baseball at the
Right,
highest
right,
level. It doesn't
right.
mean that they stopped caring about the game. It could be that they had other things going on in their life that maybe they realized, you know what, I gave it as best as I could for now, but I have to move on to something else because I got other things that are depending on me. I've got a family that's dependent on me or whatnot. But then that boils down to really a lot of things that Gary Vee says is your inner circle and those people that are around you, those people that you're bouncing thoughts and ideas off of. You don't want to be around somebody that tells you that you're not good enough. You don't want to be
Yeah,
around someone that laughs when you have a big dream. You don't want to be around somebody that you can, you have this idea and this dream and this vision and you're explaining it to them and they just laugh at you because they can't see it. They're only focused on the right now. A lot of the things that we work for, we don't get right now. A lot of the things that we want right this second or we engage in right this second, the results don't come right away. So
right.
you have to stick with that process. You have to I guess what I'm trying to say is you spent 7 years in the big league in the minor leagues before you got to the big leagues. It wasn't that you didn't have other things that were pressing on you. It's just that you made the decision to say, you know what, this is my life. Everything else is going to fall where it may. If I've got to work part-time jobs, if I got to, live at home, if I got to do this and that, I'm going to work for it because I will never ever get the chance to do it again. And the people that are laughing at you or the people that don't agree with you, like they're living their own life. I'm not living my life for them. I'm not trying to please them and make decisions for them when it comes to, oh, you shouldn't have that goal because it's too big. Well, I say no, because
Right.
you made it to the big leagues. Other guys have made it to the big leagues when people have probably told them no. Other people have done things and have been successful at things when other people, said, "Oh, you dropped out of high school, or you never even got your degree." Like Mark Cuban owns the Mavericks and he's a multi-billionaire. Dude dropped out of high school. Like, don't
Right.
tell
Right.
anybody that they can't do it. And I think the commitment, don't twist the commitment into being unrealistic, right? If you don't have the skill set, the ability to play at the next level, you got to be self-aware. And I think
Right.
you were kind of touching on that a little bit when you were closing there. But like being self-aware, that's what came to my head, is looking at yourself and saying, okay, am I really giving it the commitment that is being asked of me? Am I really putting in the work that I said that I wanted to put in? Or am I spending time doing this? Or am I spending time doing that? That's 3 hours a day that I could be putting into what I'm trying to do. So I think just to kind of wrap this up, like, how long does it take to kind of realize that? How long does it take to see that you're actually putting in the like we've defined it, we've talked about it, but like how do you, other than just saying, "Yep, I'm committed, I'm going," like how long does it take to actually realize that?
Yeah, no, I think that's a that's a lifelong process, honestly. And to your point about, me talking about getting to the big leagues being a
Mhm,
commitment, and seeing some other guys not make it or kind of fall by the wayside or decide to not play anymore.
mhm,
I was definitely leaning to the idea that, okay, you a lot of times you're gonna see stuff, outside of your control, or things that maybe look attractive to you.
mhm.
But if you have something in your mind and you believe you can do it, stay committed to it. And not everybody's path is the same.
Mhm.
So what I wrote down earlier was not letting what other people think or say get in the way of your commitment. Don't
Mhm.
care so much about how you're perceived to other people. And I think that touches exactly to your point. Don't care so much about how you're perceived to other people when you're making commitment, because it's personal.
Yeah.
Everybody's commitments are different. And like you said, being self-aware is very important. But to answer your question, I think it's a full process. However long you're trying to get to a goal, however long you're trying to get to success, I don't think that process ever stops.
Yeah.
But there are a couple of questions that I would say ask myself,
Okay.
to make sure I'm still on the right track. Is, what are three promises that I can make to myself today that have to do with my sport? And what are three promises today that I can make to myself that have to do nothing with my sport?
Mhm.
And see kind of where those line up, because those will tell you what your life commitments are inside and outside of your sport, or at least what your commitments are today.
Mhm.
So then you can kind of, build that path to where you want to go, or where you see success being. So there's multiple things I think we can do to make sure we're on the right path.
Mhm.
I don't think there's one specific thing that we can do to say, okay, I'm committed one hundred
Yeah.
percent, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think really, like, if I was, I mean, it was kind of a trick question, but it wasn't. I knew you weren't going to give me a timeline because there really is no answer. But I think that's the thing. Like, if you're saying you're
Right.
committed, then are you really committed? Like, if you're committed, there shouldn't be any question about it. There should be no someone asking the question, or really having to sit there and think, like, is he really going to do this? Is she really going to do this? Like, if you're committed, you're showing it in your actions. You're getting up when you're supposed to. You're arriving on time. Just like you said, if you told someone you play catch with them, like, something came up, but guess what? I made the commitment here, and it's better for me in the long run to stick with my commitment and go and play catch with that person and reschedule the other thing. Just like this show right here. Like, if something comes up that we can't get out of, yeah, we'll contact each other and say, hey, let's move it. But like, some things come up in our lives that we're like you're walking around with this cast thing on, like hobbling around, like, dude, like, you could be doing other things, but you want to be here. You're making the commitment. Like, we made this commitment before you got injured. So now your
Yeah,
whole
yeah.
world is shifted. But it's up to you to take the commitments that you have and figure out a way to, because it's just an obstacle. The Achilles is just an obstacle. Failing at this, or failing at this, or not being able to do this, or coming up short over here. It's just an obstacle. It's not the end game. Just like you just said that the 3 promises that I can make to myself today that have to do with my sport, 3 promises that I can make to myself today that have nothing to do with my sport. It's an ongoing process. Just because you hit a roadblock doesn't mean that's the end. Like when you're driving in your car and the car runs out of gas, like you don't wait for it to run out of gas. You go fill up. Sometimes you get distracted and you're like, crap, I've got 3 miles to go till empty. The gas station is 6 miles away. I wasn't prepared. I wasn't committed to maintaining the mechanical integrity of my vehicle and making sure there's fuel in there. Like I lost track of that. I got distracted. So it's not
Right.
it's not that, it's not that an obstacle or something is going to shut you down. If you're committed, you're committed. Let's hop on a couple questions right here. I saw this one a couple times. How do I catch the attention of my college coaches after not having a senior season and not getting scouted? I think the biggest thing is using the resources that you have available to you. Thomas, I don't know what the whole username is. Thomas Rockwood. Yeah, Thomas Rockwood. I think using the resources that you have right here. A lot of the scouting has gone digital. That's the purpose we created the Prospect Dugout Company, was to be able to encourage athletes to use social media to promote themselves. I even get emails from recruiting, companies and things like that saying, hey, a college coach, search your profile. Well, I'm not out there looking for it, but my point is, don't wait for someone to come and try to find you. Go out in the cage, record it, post it, use some hashtags, go on Twitter, post it, find conversations that are happening about hitting, take a video of yourself doing it, put it out there. You have to get it. It's all about branding. It's all about advertising and marketing. If we didn't know, I mean, Walmart, Apple, like they advertise, they're branding, they're putting themselves out there. They're not a multi-billion-dollar company because they stay quiet, right? And so you have to look at it from that point of view as well. So put yourself out there as much as possible, and really utilize the tool, Instagram, Twitter, all these tools that you have at your disposal. Just scrolling through all of these. I guess I had stopped the flow of comments because I've got so many. All right.
I think that's a good point too. Is try to do whatever you can on your end. Use your resources. There's a spot for you somewhere. So just keep working. You try to use the resources available to you, and don't be shy about it. Just like you said, brand yourself. Get yourself out there.
Well, what a great episode today. We talked time management and commitment. Time management, find the things that you're good at and work at those. Stick with it by having faith and believing in yourself. And commitment, make a promise to yourself. What am I personally committed to right now? What am I spending my time on? How do I know that I'm committed to it and not just faking it? Why am I committed to it? Stay true to your word. Do what you said you're going to do, and understand that commitment requires an extreme amount of focus. There's a reason why people at the top of their game are the way that they are, and there's a reason why a lot of people don't like some of the very good professional athletes, is because they're about what they're about. They're not about making other people happy. They're not about, like, I was watching, just in closing, just go back to the Last Dance, and there was a clip where Jordan was coming out of the locker room, and a kid came up to him, and the security guard kind of like pushed him away, or kind of pushed him up to Michael Jordan to hand him the thing to sign. Michael Jordan didn't even look down, right? And I was watching it with somebody, they made a comment, saying, he didn't even really pay attention to that kid. And I said, to be honest, I'm not mad, because Michael Jordan didn't sign up to sign autographs for people. He signed up to be the best ever NBA player, and he's not going to let things around him distract him from what he's doing. So he still signed the autograph. He still, he wasn't arrogant or whatever, push the kid away. He signed it. Right. But like, I'm sorry, like, I don't go to a 9-to-5 place of work and expect him to stop what he's doing and sign an autograph for me or do something for me. Like, you have to understand that, it is a business, but it also is a mindset. And so putting in that work and staying extremely focused is something that is really going to prove a lot of benefit to you. And then, the 3 promises that you can make to yourself that have to do with your sport and 3 promises that don't have to do with your sport, and just understanding that it's going to take a long time. It's going to take a whole lifelong process of commitment to really get what you want. But through that whole process, you're going to find things that, hey, you know what? I didn't even know that I was good at this. And guess what? Now I found something that I can do. I can spend time and manage my time and say, hey, you know what? I can go do this for a few hours a week, or do this or whatever. And you figure out that your life is more than just that one thing, or more than just a bunch of different things, grouped into one. So
Yeah.
great topics today. Time management and commitment, man. That's good things. Actually, before you texted me that we were going to talk about that, I was thinking like, wow, that's actually some things that I've been thinking about, lately as well. So Xavier, just give me a minute or two, just kind of final wrap up on time management and commitment, and just kind of, a bullet point version of it.
Yeah. I think you definitely touched on a lot of it. Time management is just definitely what we're dedicating, what is important to us,
Mm-hmm.
especially in our sport, especially even outside of our sport. What's important to you?
Mm-hmm.
Figure that out, write it down, dedicate the most time to that. And then
Mm-hmm.
try to figure out, okay, there's things that I don't like that I still need to dedicate time to. How do I knock those out of the way first? Or how do I get those done so I can spend more time on the things that I really enjoy, or the things that are really important to me, or the things that will help me get to where I want to be? And then, just like you mentioned, commitment is staying loyal to what you have planned for yourself, or the goals or aspirations that you see yourself hitting in the future. You're making promises to yourself, that you're going to be able to keep, and you're going to learn a lot throughout the journey. Like you just said, it's a long process. It's going to take a
Mm-hmm.
lot of time. What we're getting at here with this whole X factor is basically growth.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to find a way to keep learning and keep growing as a player, as a person, and eventually that's going to take over in your mind. It's going to take over visually, and then once you hit the field, things are going to be much easier for you. So if you just continue to remember those things, like we talked about today, you're setting yourself up for success.
That's it. Another great episode on the X Factor with Xavier Scruggs, coming at you live on Instagram, coming at you live on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and all the other intraweb platforms. Always a pleasure to have you. Always a pleasure to join you, and just kind of talk shop, and kind of just go back and forth on, some various topics. So looking forward to next week, getting after it, and engaging with the audience, man.
Yes, sir. Let's do it. It's been a lot of fun. I'm enjoying everybody. Keep throwing me questions in my DM.
Yeah, buddy.
A lot of prospect dugout guys have been, and girls have been, throwing questions in my DM. I'm gonna send out more videos to answer you guys' questions as well. Obviously, tune into X Factor every week on Tuesday. So thank you guys. Thank Prospect Dugout. Thank you, Joel. This has been amazing, and I'm excited to keep it going.
That's it. All right, man. Until next week, we'll see you guys later.
Yes, sir.